Don, do you know if is Jan Lucas coming tonight, or is she zooming in?
It's on the agenda, yeah.
Okay.
As well as their two daughters.
Oh, wow.
And the Steilacoom Town Administrator as well.
Well, good.
And I have a proclamation that is in, at best, 10-point type, so. See if I can dial up a bigger copy here. Nope. It's not going to work. All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council of Monday, April 5th, 2021 to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bell.
Present.
Councilmember Boki.
Present.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item of business is proclamations and presentations. And for this first item, we are going to issue a proclamation honoring and expressing our deepest appreciation for the great contributions that the late Mayor of Steilacoom, Ron Lucas, made to both his and our larger community. And tonight, I'm pleased that we have to join us his wife, Jan Lucas, his daughters, Kristen and Stephanie, and the Steilacoom Town Administrator, Paul Lovelace. Right. Madam Clerk, do we have everyone dialed in who's in the waiting room for this?
Mayor Anderson, everyone has joined us.
Thank you. Welcome, Jan, family, Paul. This is obviously a kind of a somber event for us. We share the great loss that you as a family experience with the passing of Ron. For me and for many other folks in the community, it's very personal. Ron was an outstanding individual. I was happy to consider him a friend, my favorite Oregon State Beaver. Jan and I share Coos Bay heritage, so we had a link to her original hometowns. It was something we always kind of made light of, but Ron contributed so much that we feel both a community loss and a deep personal loss. But it's very little in the scheme of things that we could do, but we wanted to recognize Ron and his contributions formally as a city. So I'm happy to issue this proclamation. Whereas Ron Lucas was commissioned as an officer in the United States Army in 1967, retiring in 1995, after completing more than 28 years of honorable service. And whereas his distinguished service included multiple assignments in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Washington, D.C. And whereas upon his retirement from the military, Ron Lucas dedicated himself to the education of youth, working as a math instructor educator for the Tacoma School District And whereas in 2003, the Tacoma Public School District recognized Lucas with the Angelo Giadrone Teacher of the Year Award. And whereas his service to the town of Steilacoom began in 1993 when he was elected as a council member, a title he held until he was elected mayor in 2001. And whereas Mr. Lucas demonstrated the highest levels of dedication and excellence through his tenure as mayor of the town of Steilacoom in a capacity for which he served for 20 years. And whereas Mayor Lucas deserves particular recognition for his efforts and community involvement serving the children of the world as past president and member of the Kiwanis Club of Steilacoom. And whereas in 2003, Mayor Lucas was inducted into the JBLM Civilian Hall of Fame as a charter member in recognition of his continued support and service to members of the armed forces and their families. And whereas Mayor Lucas was instrumental in the creation and leadership of the South Sound 911 organization, and whereas Mayor Lucas further developed relationships and oversaw the allocation of over $170 billion in federal and state transportation funds as an appointed member of the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board and the Transportation Policy Board. And whereas Mayor Lucas demonstrated caring leadership and strong vision as he helped orchestrate a number of policy priorities from conception to completion through his many community involvement roles with organizations such as the State of Washington Transportation Improvement Board, Pierce County Regional Council, Tacoma Pierce County Board of Health, Rainier Communications Commission, Sound Transit, and Pierce County Cities and Towns Associations. And whereas Mayor Lucas was a friend to the Lakewood community, showing his generous support of local park improvements and development initiatives, and as a Partners for Parks board member. Now, therefore, the City of Lakewood and the citizens of the City of Lakewood do hereby honor and express our deepest appreciation to Ron Lucas for his exemplary accomplishments for setting the standard for which quality leadership, both civilian and military, should aspire to emulate. Proclaimed this 5th day of April, 2021, Don Anderson, Mayor. So I would like to give Ron applause. This virtual environment, it's always difficult to transition, but Jan, if you'd like to, I'd like to give you the opportunity to say a few words to someone on behalf of the family or city of Steilacoom.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. All that you said, of course, is known to many of the people in the community, but I think people need to know that he absolutely loved every minute of what he was doing. He wouldn't have missed a meeting. He wouldn't have not contacted you. He considered most of you personal friends because he'd worked with you for such a long time. Don, I know our connection goes way back as well. You'll see a picture of Paul Lovelace at the bottom as well. Paul and Ron were like twins. They did everything for the good of the communities in the area. He was totally dedicated to Lakewood, to Pierce County, as well as to Steilacoom. And never mind all the things he did on Fort Lewis with our partnership brigade, the 42nd MPs. So I thank you for this recognition. I continue to be overwhelmed by the amount of outpouring there is for him. It's appreciated, and we will be having a celebration of life at the end of July. So be watching for that. We hope it will be a true celebration that he would love, not a mournful thing, but a celebration. So you'll be hearing more about that. But thank you so much for the honor and for honoring Ron.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your coming out. I think Ron epitomizes the title of Frosty Westering, the late coach at the PLU football team's title of his book, which was "Make the Big Time Where You Are." I think per population, Ron probably made a bigger impact than any other elected official has in the state of Washington, coming out of the historic town of Steilacoom and making such a big impact all over the South Sound and the Western Washington region. So thanks again for being here. We appreciate his efforts, and he won't soon be forgotten by those of us who had the opportunity to serve with him. Mr. Whalen.
Well, I was just saying thank you to Jan and the family. I echo Don's comments and all the council's comments. Ron was an incredible friend to all of us, and we very much appreciate the family being here tonight and accepting this small token of appreciation for a man who has done incredible things for all of us in the community. Thank you.
Thanks again. And I hope to be there in July. So we now move to our next item of business, the presentation of the city's 25th anniversary art contest. And for this, we have Sally Martinez, Connie Coleman Lackady from Sister Cities. And first, Sally Martinez will provide an introduction to the city's 25th anniversary art contest.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. This is a very special year for the city. It's a milestone of our 25th anniversary. And in light of that, the Arts Commission created an arts contest. We were trying to come up with ways to engage the largest number of people in the community to celebrate and have a hand in that celebration at a time when we can't come together physically. And this art contest proved to do just that. We had well over 110 entries, and it was grades 1 through 12 that got to participate, as well as adults. And unique to this contest was the participation of the Lakewood Sister Cities Association, who brought in students from Gimhae, South Korea. And Connie Coleman Lackady did an amazing job working with the liaisons there. And they had over 80 entries alone. And it was just students. We'll show a slideshow at the end of this presentation of the winners, and you'll see the really very touching descriptions that went along with the artwork. This couldn't have happened without Twin Star Credit Union, who literally the day after conception of this idea stepped forward and said, absolutely, we want to sponsor the monetary prizes. And the art contest really couldn't have happened without those monetary prizes. And the Lakewood Sister Cities Association offered monetary prizes to the Gimhae students. So how it's going to be shared? Well, it was launched today on the city's website in the form of an electronic flip book, which is just a very clever way of, you can just flip through it with the arrows, and it's like turning the pages of a book, and there's a picture and a description per page, and there's ribbons for those that won first, second, and third place prizes. Every other participant also got entered into a raffle contest, and the Chamber of Commerce and the Lakewood Library were kind enough to donate both gift certificates and prizes for those winners of the raffle. You'll also find a link on our website, not only on our website, but it's been shared to our Facebook and social media page. So please share it around to get the word out. I'd like to hand this over to Connie Coleman Lackady from Lakewood Sister Cities Association to talk about her wonderful participation in this project.
Thank you so much, Sally, for bringing us into this wonderful event and a great way to share the themes for the event, for the art contest. So as you said, the participation was far beyond our expectations with over 80 entries. It started with only one entry during the first 3 days, and Sally and I said, oh my gosh, what's happening? But then we were flooded with amazing art from the 1st to the 12th grade students. I want to give a special thanks to James Kim, Lakewood Sister Cities board member and local businessman, and Sun Yeon Kyung, AKA June, so I'll just call her June, Exchange and Cooperation Team, City of Gimhae, who volunteered their time outside of their full-time jobs to translate the entries that we received. I would also like to thank Sally for opening the door for Sister Cities to welcome students from Gimhae to participate under the theme Unity. I would like to also give special thanks to Mayor Hyung Song Gang, excuse me for messing that up, for accepting our invitation to participate and for his generous offering of June to work so closely with me as GimHay students unfolded the beauty and their understanding of unity. Thank you also to Hank Jones, Lakewood Youth Council member, for incorporating unity as a theme. So it wasn't just about Lakewood, it was about unity. And the GimHay students really took a special meaning for that and for Lakewood. That word alone definitely resonated with them, which is deeply felt through their art and their expressions of the two cities as sisters. I would like to also thank David and Jennifer Roholt. They're Pierce College professors of art in many forms, one being Korean art, and Kathleen Hoban, Sister Cities Vice President, for volunteering to judge the 80 pieces of art. Thank you, Mayor Anderson, for your support. I am thrilled that we will be able to share tonight's celebration through the YouTube with the Mayor of GimHay to share with the students and citizens of GimHay. They will receive certificates and a flip book to share as they also celebrate with us in GimHay as soon as they receive all of the information. So it'll probably be a couple of weeks before they have their celebration, and I'm sure that they will be sending us a video of that as well. So thank you, Sally, and thank you, Mayor Anderson and the City Council for including us.
Thanks. And we have some more acknowledgements before we show some of the winning art. The City Council is thrilled that we had this number of participants and had such a great showing from our youth, and I love the link with our sister city of GimHay. A lot of thoughtfulness went into this art, using the themes of love, Lakewood, and unity. Goes well with our 25th anniversary theme of building community. I'd like give a special thanks to Twin Star Credit Union for being the sponsor of the monetary prizes for first, second, and third place, and for to the Clover Park School District for advertising the contest to its students and their families. Also, a thank you to the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce and the Pierce County Library System for providing raffle prizes. Of course, Connie, you and the Sister Cities Association deserve a big kudos for facilitating the participation of students in GimHay, South Korea, and thank you to the judges who took the time to review and score the art. So now we're going to view the winners. Ms. Martinez, will you show us a PowerPoint with the winners? No names are going to be read aloud, is my understanding, but those viewing will be able to see which artists have ribbons and what their names are on the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Sally and Connie. You have anything further to add?
Just that you can see all the submissions on the links in our social media and website. And I hope you'll take the time to read through them. They're really heartwarming.
I do want to say also that many of the students, when they added to their description of their drawing or their artwork or anything like that, they are so excited to one day actually get to visit Lakewood. And they feel like there's so much more attuned to us and feel that we are part of their family now.
Well, Gimhe has been a wonderful partner. The thoughtfulness that went into their PPE delivery is kind of unsurpassed. So it's heartwarming to see the continued endeavor that they're putting forward to participate in our relationship. Also, the art's quite impressive. So
yes,
thank you both for your contributions to this program. It turned out wonderfully.
and our next event will be them coming here to visit with us. So thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you. We now move to the Clover Park School District report. And for this, we have Board Member Alyssa Anderson Pearson. Greetings.
Hi. I'm not okay. I'm on. Sorry, couldn't see myself. Good evening, Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, and council members. I want to start out by saying I'm sorry if you can hear kids crying in the background. My husband is doing solo bedtime duty for the first time. We have a 1-month-old, so hopefully not though. Seems like you might have it under control. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about what's going on in the Clover Park School District. The most exciting news is that in some capacity, all grade levels are back in the classroom. It is hybrid learning, so unfortunately, there is still at-home learning mixed with in-person learning, unless, of course, families opted to keep their students or their kids 100% virtual. Recently, the governor did approve 3 feet of social distancing instead of 6 feet at schools, which is great news. Unfortunately, we can't just rush back into the classrooms with 3 feet of social distancing because there's a lot of logistics behind it. So we're working to see if it's even feasible to do this year. Just for an example, one of the challenges is you have to have single student desks for every student, which isn't the case currently. So you have to go and procure those. How long is it going to take to get those? And by the time you do get them, are we in June and students are, back, greater than 50% for just like 2 weeks. So we're trying to see what our options are, or maybe that will have to start next year. Of course, everyone's goal is to get all students back in the classroom full time. I don't think you'll meet anyone that doesn't think that that's in the best interest of students in the long term. This is an exciting time of year when students are starting to receive college acceptance letters. So some of the schools that I've seen come across my emails are the University of North Carolina. One of our students got accepted to their honors college. Cornell University. One student got accepted into the Air Force Academy and West Point. So he's trying to decide which option to choose. Amherst College, one of our students was very excited about that because there is an 11% acceptance rate at that school. So very exciting for her. And also exciting news, all employees were eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. I'd say a few weeks ago, maybe it's been a month now. And so resources have really been going out to try to get all staff, but especially teachers vaccinated as soon as possible, because that was one of the things that, teachers really wanted the vaccine before they got into the classroom. So we're just glad that they have that option now. We are, as you know, from our joint meeting, we're committed to our equity journey. We're still moving along in our process to get our policy written. We're estimating an end date for September for that. We saw the first draft of that policy. We currently have 83 stakeholders involved in the process. And they include educators, community members, recent alumni, students, families and parents, as well as district staff. So a lot of input there, a lot of different opinions, and we're hoping to come up with the best policy for our district. We will be focused on academic recovery for the foreseeable future. I don't think it's going to come to any surprise anyone that the past year has been very challenging for students, not only academically, but for social and emotional learning. There's definitely going to be a gap in student learning. So we are coming up with a plan to help students as they continue to come back into the classroom. The plan includes school loss, which is different from learning loss. It's kind of understanding that things might not ever go back to how they were pre-COVID. We now live in a post-COVID world. The social and emotional aspects, for example, student relationships. A lot of kids went a long time without, in-person interaction with other kids. Belongingness, mental health, that's especially important. And then, of course, academic support. The state also did extend the emergency waiver of high school credits for this year. They did it last year as well. It's a case-by-case basis. It's not just everyone gets to graduate, but the schools do get to look at each student and see if, they are able to graduate with the emergency waiver of the credits. So we've really been focused on the students who may be on the edge of not graduating and trying to track them down and help do whatever we can to get everyone to graduate. We don't want COVID to be the reason why they're not graduating, but of course, if you're not doing any school work, that's a different scenario. So, we're still trying to navigate all of this. It's definitely been a challenging year. We're on spring break this week, so hopefully we can have a strong finish to the school year. And that is it for my report. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions from council? Looking for Mr. Whalen.
Thank you, Alyssa. Congratulations on the new baby, number one. On the COVID year, it's been a challenging year for a lot of students. So the question is, when they get into the next year, is there going to be some sort of mechanism to test the students to determine their skill level to see how far behind they are in order to focus resources to catch them up?
I'm not sure if there's going to be how the evaluation will go. I do know that it's on our agenda for Monday night's meeting to talk about the academic recovery plan. So I'm sure we'll know more from the staff at that point. Unfortunately, I don't have a strong answer for you right now, but I'm sure that they will be looking at each student to see how far they are behind, but I'm not sure if that will be an assessment or, just a teacher figuring out as the school year starts. But I can definitely let you know as soon as Monday rolls around.
Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Go see if Ryan has kept data alive.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything, so that's good. All right. Bye.
All right, now we move to the public comment section of the agenda. This is when any member of the public may make a comment, whether or not it's regarding an item on the agenda, just anything pertinent to the city or the council. Please note that you can make your comments in writing, by email, or virtually. Comments may be sent by mail or email in advance to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street Southwest, Lakewood, Washington 98499, or B. Schumacher at cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting have been provided to the City Council electronically. Madam Clerk, have any comments been received prior to the meeting?
Mayor Anderson, we did not receive any comments in advance of this evening's meeting.
That does not preclude you from participating in the public comment. If you would like to provide public comments, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling in by telephone at 1-253-215-8782. That's 1-253-215-8782, the number on the screen, and entering the participant ID 868-7263-2373, or joining us via Zoom, entering the participant ID 868-7263-2373. Once entering the meeting, please enter your name or chosen identifier. Use the raised hand feature to be called upon. When you are unmuted, please provide your name and city of residence, such as Patty Bell, Lakewood, Washington. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. There'll be a timer on the screen. Outside of that 3 minutes of public comment, however, while you will have the ability to raise your hand on the Zoom app, you will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except for that 3-minute period when you are called upon to speak. So with that said, let's check here. And it appears the first person who signed up to speak is Mr. Dennis Haugen.
Okay, there, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Dennis Haugen, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I used to live in Lakewood. I think you got a hell greater than COVID headed in your direction. You never know how much people know about what's going on because there's at least 2 big channels that do nothing but propaganda. But I watch Newsmax, I watch Fox News, more conservative channels. As some of you might know and some of you might not, Biden invited the world to come through the open borders. Might be a math problem there, trying to figure out how to get 7.5 billion people into the United States and take care of them. But this is a cartel. They're organized. They're worldwide. They're bringing in people from every country in the world. Terrorists, they work with every nationality, every place. And their usual thing before, see, so we have such a wide gap in competency between Trump and Biden. It's extremely wide. Trump was very competent at getting results. Now we have total incompetence. Tore down all of the rules and regulations and policies that Trump had. So what they do is they bring all kinds of kids up here that people are paying for, and they run them in, and then the customs has to take care of the kids, and then the cartel just runs the criminals into the country. And they're there to sell drugs. That's what they're there for. That's what they're coming here for. Selling drugs and human trafficking. And some states are so stupid that they can't recognize the difference between legal and illegal. And Washington is one of them. And you have incompetent people in the state government who run for office and don't even know what an oath to the Constitution is. But your schools are wide open. You got regulations there too that make it difficult for federal and local people to figure out who's coming into your school. Probably in 5 years, if you don't wake up and get serious, all your kids will be comatose from drugs. It's serious. They mean business, and they're after your kids. And they're after their money to sell them drugs.
Next person who signed up is Seth Borman.
Hi, can I get a quick mic check? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'd like to begin. My name is Seth Borman, and I'm speaking tonight from Temecula, California. But I'm here to represent my father, Steve Borman, who owns 8.8 acres of land, or approximately 20% of the MF3 district. For years, we've envisioned an opportunity to build hundreds of apartments in the Station District, and along with them, a coffee shop and a daycare. This aligns with the comprehensive plan, which envisions this area as dense urban apartment complexes. Today, however, we think this vision is endangered by this new sub-area plan. While the goals are laudable, we don't believe it will work. The land we own, currently holding 35 homes, is zoned for over 475 homes. If the plan is passed, however, we believe that number will fall. Planners envision townhomes built to 30 to 40 units per acre, with each home having 100 square feet of open space, 48 square feet of private space, and off-street parking. After speaking with a half a dozen architects, we believe the townhouse density might be as low as 15 to 22 homes per acre, nowhere near 30 or 40. In conversations with local developers, we've established that apartment land is worth around $22,000 per buildable unit. That means that to equal the value of the existing buildings, we need to build at least 350 units of apartments, or around 40 units per acre. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to take the risks inherent to development. Over the past few years, rents in Lakewood have risen very quickly. We feel strongly that the path to housing affordability is through the construction of a large number of apartments with modest amenities. Street parking in the MF3 zone could provide enough parking for almost 500 homes. By moving parking out from the parcel to the street, redevelopment will be easier and more likely to happen sooner rather than later. The issue at hand here is whether this neighborhood will change or remain stagnant. The open space amenities required under this plan are usually seen in cities like Los Angeles, which used open space requirements to prevent development for over 30 years before relenting under the pressure of their housing crisis. Adopting this approach here will have the same result. Thank you for your time.
That's all the people that I see who have signed up and raised their hands to participate in public comment. Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak at public comment? Last call. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at public comment? Please raise your hand. James Guerrero.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Brianna, I believe I was going to have 10 minutes for the parking in Lakewood presentation. Is that, is it time for that now? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if that was my place.
No, this is, James, this is public comment. 3 minutes on everything, anything. I don't know. don't recall seeing that on the agenda, though.
That's set for the public hearing on the actual sub-area plan itself. I think is going to be in front of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that I'd like to get the parking presentation in the official record.
Yeah,
and so
like I said, that's part
laying
of
it to the public hearing is be appropriate.
Okay,
he's
sorry.
on its public hearing section.
Understood.
So if that's satisfactory, James, we'll have you on then.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to make public comment? Seeing none, I declare public comment closed. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 1st, 2021. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of March 8th, 2021. C, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 15th, 2021. D, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $1,583,133.94 for the period of February 17th, 2021 through March 15th, 2021. E, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $2,300,388.89 for the period of February 16th, 2021 through March 15th, 2021. F, motion number 2021-20, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Hemisphere Design in the amount of $141,500 for the Build Your Better Here imaging campaign. G, motion number 2021-21, authorizing the execution of an extra duty police services contract with the Clover Park School District for school resource officers. H, motion number 2021-22, appointing Lynn Larson to serve on the Planning Commission through December 15th, 2021. I, items filed in the office of the City Clerk. 1, Lakewood Arts Commission meeting minutes of February 1st, 2021. 2, Planning Commission meeting minutes of February 17th, 2021. And 3, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting minutes of February 23rd, 2021.
Thank you. Is there any item which any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Moss, seconded by Mr. Bulkey, that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now move to public hearings and appeals. Madam Clerk.
This is the date set for a public hearing on the Lakewood Station District Sub-Area Plan, Development Code, and SEPA Planned Action.
For this, we have Ms. Spear.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Tiffany Spear, Long Range and Strategic Planning Manager for the city. I'm going to give you a very brief overview through a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll share my screen. And much of this was covered about a month ago, but I'll just do this for the benefit of those that may want to testify tonight. What we're doing tonight is a public hearing on 3 pieces, or 3 documents, I should say, that I tend to call the package. First of all is the Station District Sub-Area Plan itself, which is where policies and the vision statement for this area of the city is included. The second attachment to your document, and the second document being reviewed tonight, is the form-based code for the Lakewood Station sub-area. And then the third item that you had before you tonight is the SEPA planned action, and the environmental checklist is what is attached to your documents this evening, starting on page 94. So I mentioned there's a number of attachments in addition to the plan, the code, and the checklist. There's also amendments that will be happening within Title 18A to reflect the adoption. A couple of brief changes to show that there will be a new code titled 18C, which will be specific to the sub-area plan. There will be several amendments also as part of your comprehensive plan package coming forward to you in a few weeks, actually. And attachment E summarizes those. Attachment F is a table that summarizes the public comments received by the Planning Commission and then the responses by the department to those. And the final attachment are the signed minutes from the Planning Commission meeting, where if you'll recall, the Planning Commission adopted a recommendation to you that changes some of the parking requirements within the draft code. Just for orientation, the Station District Subarea Plan is this hatched mark. So it's a southeastern section of the city. Its southern border is along I-5 up to the 512 interchange. West border is Bridgeport Way, and the northern border, for the most part, is 108th Street Southwest. In very high summary, the plan does not propose to rezone any parcels. The densities within the plan also anticipate those that are currently already recognized within the zones for this area. There's no change there. The intent was rather to change the development regulations in order to make it easier to achieve higher densities that are already allowed but have not yet been realized in this area. With those changes to code and anticipated higher densities, this sub-area of the city is planned to absorb 1,722 dwellings and 1,276 jobs over the next 20 years or so. And it will require planning with utilities and the public services. As you know, the city is not, quote, full service. So the water, the power, the sewer, all provided by external agencies, and they've all been involved with this process to date. Oops. So what you have in front of you in your packet is updated maps within the plan, or I'm sorry, within the code that already show plaza streets and alleys in the plan. So there was a little lack of consistency between the two. There was also a discussion added in the code to reflect the fact that there are plaza streets described in the plan. And then there's also the addition of a park fee in lieu option in the draft you have before you tonight, similar to the one that's allowed in the downtown sub-area. And then there were several technical or Scrivener corrections provided as well as part of this latest draft. The study session occurred about a month ago. We are in the middle of the revised SEPA planned action public comment via the state's Department of Ecology. That'll run through April 13th. Tonight is the public hearing for council, and then at this point, council action is scheduled for April 19th, and the effective date of whatever gets adopted ultimately would be 30 days after adoption. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions or turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for the hearing.
Questions for Ms. Spear? Seeing none, I have a question for Ms. Wachter. I don't see the gentleman who testified from Temecula or made public comment from Temecula still on the line. Is it possible to or proper to incorporate that, since we have it recorded in the record, since we didn't explain to him that there was a difference between public comment and the hearing? You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't catch all of that, but I think I was understanding you to be discussing testimony as part of a public hearing versus in the context of public comment.
Right. I neglected to indicate to the gentleman from Temecula testifying on behalf or commenting on behalf of his father that there was a difference between public comment and testimony in the public hearing. Since it is recorded, is it possible that we incorporate those comments in the record of the public hearing?
My suggestion in that vein would be to move to append that comment to the public comment pertinent to this topic. It's not the most traditional way to do it, but we are operating still under the pandemic emergency provisions, and we wouldn't want the person to have to go redo the entire thing. It's clearly there in the agenda. It's on the right day. and it just was at a different place in the agenda. So I would suggest there be a motion to append that comment to this public hearing and have it be included that way, if that's the will of the council to do it.
Well, the will of the council can be shown if somebody makes a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we make that adjustment.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Moss, seconded by Mr. Whalen, that we incorporate the public comment on the sub-area plan into, as an, to have it appended to the record, I think was what Ms. Walker said. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. So now we'll go to the virtual, but Ms. Walker?
So with that, what will happen is that the clerk will make a note of it and it will become part of the legislative record. That testimony given during the public comment period is incorporated into this public hearing.
Thank you.
I was just, oh, that's.
And for all of you who have said lawyers can't find a way to yes, this is an example.
We stand corrected.
It can't happen. Thank you. So now we move to the virtual testimony part of the public hearing. If you would like to provide live public testimony on this at this public hearing, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling by telephone to 1-253-215-8732. That's 1-253-215-8732, the number on the screen, and entering meeting ID 868-7263-2373, or joining via the Zoom application with participant ID 868-7263-2373. On entering the meeting, the hearing, please enter your name or other chosen identifier. Use the raised hand feature to be called upon. When you are unmuted, please provide your name and city of residence. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Outside of the public hearing, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise their hand for the duration of the meeting. You will not be acknowledged and your microphone will be remain muted except for the time when you are recognized to speak for your 3-minute period. The difference between this and public comment in a very important respect is that the comment or subject matter of your testimony is limited to the Lakewood Station District sub-area plan as the only topic. First, however, before we go to the open public testimony, we have invited Mr. James Guerrero, member of our Planning Commission, to provide testimony regarding, particularly regarding parking in the district. And we give Mr. Guerrero 10 minutes. James?
Can you hear me?
Yes, and your screen share is working.
Great, thank you. So my name is James Guerrero. I'm a local architect and member of the Lakewood Planning Commission. And in review of the station district in the Planning Commission, I did quite a bit of research on parking in particular. And so I have a presentation on parking that I gave to the Planning Commission, although I will abbreviate it as much as I can. I understand I have 10 minutes. But I would say that the intent here would apply to parking throughout the city. So it's something that I think we need to really be paying attention to as we move forward. So my presentation is about parking in Lakewood. So we'll look at the future of car use and parking, the cost of vehicle ownership, the proliferation of parking, parking in the environment, the cost of building parking lots, parking policy in other cities, high transit residential parking, and what should Lakewood do? In my presentation, this video on the left is a video from the company called Waymo. They have they're a self-driving car company. In the video, the car drives up, picks up two people, they get in the back seat, they're driven to their destination, and there is no driver. The car is autonomous. Kind of interesting to see that actually happen. There's an area in Arizona, I believe it's about a 100 square mile area that this is in operation. And is this the future? Just a couple of notes from the graphic on the right. 94% of US crashes involve human error. And in 2016, there were 37,000 deaths from car accidents in the US. So do we need all that parking? I'll just read the middle paragraph here. The vision goes like this: in the not too distant future, fleets of AV stands for autonomous vehicles will roam city streets, picking people up and dropping them off wherever they need to go. Eventually there will be less and less need for private car parking. Instead, people will just order an AV in the same way they order Uber and Lyft taxis today. For the most optimistic predictions, this could herald the future where parking lots are turned into sports fields and multi-story converted into housing. Working towards less vehicle ownership promotes equity. So the AAA lists car ownership as costing about $8,500 to $9,000 annually. The poverty level for a family of four in Lakewood is $26,200. And Lakewood has 19% of its population below the poverty line. If you do the math here, you'll see owning a car is a real stretch for a large segment of our population. How much parking do we really need? This is the next few graphics are taken from Google Earth. I don't know when the photograph was taken, but this was a day in the life of Lakewood. This is town center, of course. This particular graphic, you can see Panera on the upper right, Target's on the bottom of the screen. And I would point out that, you know, being longtime Lakewood residents, I personally have rarely seen the area that my arrow is going to with very many cars in it. It just doesn't happen very often, if ever. This is the graphic of the area behind the theater in Barnes & Noble. I would venture to say that the number of cars in the lot right here is near its maximum that I've ever seen it. It's just always a field of asphalt. Big Lots Hobby Lobby, which is a real active area, there's just large chunks of it that are just rarely used. And so my intent here is to show you that it looks like we've provided substantially more parking than we need and use. So it's estimated to be as many as 2 billion parking stalls in the US. There's estimated to be 250 million cars in the US. So in other words, for every car, we've got 8 parking stalls in the country. 257 million American adults. So basically we effectively have 1 car per American adult in the country. Why the number of parking stalls is important is the graphic on the right is taken from the EPA in 2003, and it's describing an urban heat island effect. Basically what a heat island effect is that areas that are more highly developed have a hotter temperature. So if you look at the downtown, you see a temperature of 92, where the rural area would be a temperature of 85. And even when you drop down into the suburban residential, we have a temperature of 88. A big contributor to heat island effect is asphalt. Asphalt absorbs heat, it's dark color, dense material, absorbs a lot of heat. and contributes to the heat island effect. So parking is expensive. This is a case study for my own building, 7520 Bridgeport. My building area is 3,200 square feet. Land value based on assessors, treasurer's information is $11 a square foot. My parking lot has 13 stalls, 6,600 square feet of area. The value, just the value of the square footage of the parking lot is $73,000. Parking lot construction cost me about $60,000. So just that raw calculation says my stalls cost me about $10,000 per stall. I built this about 10 years ago, by the way, so it's not in current dollars even. In the last 18 years, the time that I've owned the building, I've never observed the parking lot to be full. And so we designed a parking lot for city standards, but we really over-designed it. From my perspective, we didn't need that much parking. On top of that, people talk about structured parking. So structured parking is parking garages. Parking garages are extremely expensive to build. The construction cost is, in my research, says $24,000 per car, but I'll tell you it's substantially higher than that. So it's just very expensive to build parking either on surface or in parking garages. So what are other cities doing about parking? I did a bunch of research on various other cities. I will list the down towards the bottom: Bellingham, Olympia, Yakima, Kennewick, Beaverton, Oregon, have all had parking minimums completely eliminated in at least one area of the city. And Tacoma and Seattle are on that list as well. The graphic on the right, I know it's small. It's San Francisco proposed the adjacent phase change from current driving to a parking model. And basically, the next graphic will show you where they're starting and then where they want to get to. So basically where they're starting is they have basically 2 lanes of traffic each way, parking down both sides, and then they'll have parking structure, restaurant, parking structure, shopping, restaurant, market. And ultimately they'd like to get to a model where the cars actually are autonomous. We don't need as much roadway for them. We don't need we need virtually no parking for them in downtown areas. And you can see that you can open up just a whole bunch more of the city if you're moving towards this model. And I know that Lakewood isn't San Francisco, but I think we should pay attention to where the world is going, so we don't get caught overbuilding the parking. In high transit access areas, parking is provided at 1.01 parking stalls per residential unit, but utilization is 0.64 vehicles per residential unit. So I apologize for this graphic. It's taken from the, I think it's Institute of Traffic Engineers journal from 2013. And it's a graphic I pulled off online. But basically what it's saying is in high traffic areas, we as a society have provided about 1 stall per residential unit, but we only use 0.64 stalls per residential unit. So it's saying that we're overbuilding these areas. So the proposal that came before the Planning Commission before we amended it had proposed 1.25 parking stalls per residential unit. But based on the above chart, I would say even that was based on real world conditions, double what should have been required. So what should Lakewood do about parking? The entire station district is within a half mile of the transit hubs. So these 2 red circles are half miles of the 2 transit hubs, the train station and the park and ride. So Lakewood should be promoting the station hub for low and middle income households due to proximity to transit options. Private cars are an unnecessary burden on low-income residents in the station district, and building parking is very expensive, increasing the development cost and decreasing effective density potential. Excess parking is a waste of natural resources, contributes to urban heat island effect, and disrupts natural systems. And new car technology may render current parking needs obsolete. And I would say I'm not personally against parking. I realize that if in our current environment, we will, for middle income households, we need parking as part of our solutions because that's the way we work right now. But what I'm suggesting is if we're promoting the station district to have any low-income component, we shouldn't burden the developer and the people that live there with the cost of being so dependent on cars. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we'll continue with public testimony. Recognize Dennis Haugen. Got a hand up, but I don't see him. There he is.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, I look at your plan and I see 1,276 jobs. Who's going to hire those people? What is going to be their incentive? You know, on a national level, we brought our corporate tax down to 21%. Why? To make it competitive. Competition is the key. So what have you got wrapped up in here that's going to attract somebody to hire these 1,276 jobs? And then you don't have very good control over anything. Those hotels in Seattle that now suddenly are going to be bought for homeless. Was that planned or not? Don't think it was planned. That kind of irregularity can scare investors away because they don't know what you're going to do. And a lot of that cash that goes to buy those drugs is not coming from that employer who's incentivized for some reason to be in there giving a job. It comes right out of those little debit cards that you, the taxpayer, give them to get them to gather in neighborhoods. And nobody's got enough courage to go monitor the situation and figure out if there's a better way. But when you put a tent is a home, tent is a home, just doesn't have a bathroom. And when you can't control where people put tents, you're in a lot of trouble, and you can do a lot of planning, but it's going to go in a completely different direction. And Washington state cities just don't seem to be able to keep control of things. I've been listening to bad news since the day I left there. You got to create incentive. And you're going to have to start with the state, because you got some lunatics that you put down there. And anyway, think.
It's all the people who have apparently signed up to testify on the Lakewood Station District Sub-Area Plan. Does anyone else wish to testify on the Lakewood Station District Sub-Area Plan? Last call. Does anyone wish to speak at the public hearing? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. We now move to ordinances. Ordinance number 750. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 750, amending chapter 9.06 of the Lakewood Municipal Code related to controlled substances.
There's some additional materials. Let's see.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. I'm Heidi Wachter, the city attorney for the city of Lakewood. And tonight, the chief of police, Mike Zarro, is also available. I don't know if he's on right this minute. As you know, this is a little bit of a surprise when the Supreme Court issued their ruling that we've previously briefed you on. And that ruling was that the state law regarding possession of controlled substances was not constitutional because it did not include the element of knowledge. So in other words, under the previous law, if someone happened to have drugs found on them by the police, they could be charged and in fact convicted, even if they never knew that the drugs were on them. And the Supreme Court said that that was not constitutional.
You're frozen in time, Ms. Wachter.
Sorry. I can keep trying.
You're back on.
You can hear me.
Maybe if you go to shut the video down, you usually get a better feed.
I don't know what to do next if you can't hear me.
So we can hear you off and on. Once you shut your video off, upper right-hand corner, 3 dots, it's click on that, drop down menu, stop video, and your sound should work better.
Oh, yes, the host has stopped the video. If that's better, I will continue this way, and I appreciate your indulgence as I go through this. The easy fix, putting in knowledge, is what's before the council. The legislature is not expected to make that fix. And one of the issues is, okay, what is the legislature expected to do? One of the bills before the legislature, the testimony was taken today, and it appears that this, at least in the estimation of some, is a better option, but by the estimation of all, there will not be a fix to the knowledge element. One of the issues that we're watching for is whether or not there's a statewide program funded, and if we are a city that has adopted the ordinance that's before you tonight, we may not be eligible for the funding that's at issue. So we've provided materials to you in previous meetings. We've provided materials to you tonight. The legislation that went before the state legislature today would have had our municipal courts adjudicating 18 to 20-year-olds. That is expected to be taken out of the state law. This current law is looking exclusively at treatment programs. If the city adopts the ordinance that's before them, we could also be preempted by state law. I would be happy to try and answer any questions that the council may have, and I'm sorry for any inability for you guys to hear me.
I think we heard any questions from Ms. Wachter. So I guess in summary, Ms. Wachter, my question would be, is it correct that we don't know if the legislature is going to do anything? If the legislature does something, it won't be this fix. If they do something, it may or may not have a preemption, and it may or may not include money for treatment. It may or may not disqualify somebody. So it's all up in the air.
I do want to add one piece, Mr. Mayor, and it was presented to you earlier this afternoon by the manager, and that is the potential for an initiative. And that is one of the concerns, is that if the state legislature adopts something, it is less likely we will be subject to an initiative by the people. And the thought is that if an initiative goes through, it could be anything of a wide range of potential options. There is some concern So the recommendation from the staff has been to wait and see what the legislature does. You don't have to do that. Other jurisdictions have not necessarily done that. So I'm now being told that my sound is coming through as long as you don't have to look at me. So I will assume you can hear me and we'll go from there. Thank you.
That would leave everything in a vacuum. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
You said, so that would be, staff recommendation would be essentially to leave everything, leave a vacuum.
Yes, the staff recommendation is to wait to see what the legislature adopts. There's the potential for funding for a, yes. And there's the potential for preemption, and there's the potential of, obviously, an initiative would take time.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Walker, thank you. I had a question about when I look at the ordinance, there's a whereas, the third whereas, and it says, whereas the state legislature has failed to immediately remedy this deficiency is one of, and I guess that particular whereas, I mean, what was the expectation that the state legislature could do that would have met the standard of doing something immediately? I'm just wondering about the factual real relevance of that whereas.
Councilmember Branstetter, you cut out on me, but based on what I heard your question being, it has to do with what could the state have done. The fix on this is simple. If you look at the state court's ruling, it is as simple as the ordinance in front of you. The state legislature could have done exactly this. And so the next question is, well, why haven't they? Because of what you're seeing in states like Oregon. There is a prevailing question among people all over the state, and as you saw in Oregon, as to whether or not the drug problem should be treated in the manner that it has been as an enforcement and prosecution issue. And what we are hearing from our folks in Olympia are that the days of this being treated strictly as a criminal issue are, yes, we have the authority right now without any preemption or anything like that to adopt our own laws on it, but we would then be prosecuting cases we've never prosecuted before, relying on the state toxicology lab to test the drugs, and doing our own enforcement on our own dime. The chances that the state would do the simple fix are non-existent would be an extreme way to put it, but they are extremely unlikely. There is debate on this, but it's a level where we think that that will prevail at the legislature. It could have been an easy fix, though, if that's your.
So I understand that there is a desire to be able to have something in law that is enforceable at some level, whether it's at the municipal court level or wherever, to be able to go and do that, and so with respect to the whereas statement, where we're basing it on the legislature failed to immediately act, I guess that we're still in the legislative session, the first one since the Supreme Court decision. and if we were going to adopt an ordinance before that session is over, I would, I guess, rather not have the word immediately in there, because we're still within the time zone of where they could, even if we don't expect them to. Or else a whereas that more accurately says we're taking action because we don't think they're going to. But I don't know what we can say that we have that an expectation of them having done something immediately. And we sort of given the governor a pass in that he would have to have a role in any fix the legislature would make. And I guess that then my other question is, the majority of the words in our ordinance are dealing with cannabis. Cannabis rules, why is that so much more complicated than the controlled substances fix of knowingly possessed?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Councilmember Branstetter. As for the whereases and the immediately part, we can certainly tweak that language. That's not part of the actual legislation. And you're right, we don't know what the legislature is going to do until they finish their session. But I'm not sure I understood the last part of your question.
I think I did, Ms. Walker. It's borrowed from the state statute because the original statute included
Correct.
marijuana. And when marijuana was decriminalized by state law, it had to be accepted out, and accepting it out for people over 21 required more wordsmithing than the basic law did to begin with. So we have to make sure that we aren't crossways with state law regarding cannabis.
That's exactly correct.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I guess I'd like to add it to that one whereas, but the rest of the ordinance is good as far as I can see. But I don't have an amendment to offer because I don't really know how to word it.
Strike the whereas. There's not a motion.
The whereas could simply be struck.
So I just, before I go out for a motion, motion a second, which may or may not happen, I just like to note, part of this is there's three elements to this. And the first element is the most obvious, is that you're making it a misdemeanor consistent with what was formerly a state felony before the Supreme Court surprisingly threw it out, the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. The second element is that there is no tool to coerce someone into drug treatment at this time, even if the treatment is available and funded, other than a court, like a behavioral court, like our Veterans Court. Because the Involuntary Treatment Act in the state of Washington does not provide for that. And the third element is that this is potentially a political statement by Lakewood that we don't want to tolerate the open air drug use and dealing, because there is obvious dealing that you see on Market Street in Tacoma every day as I drive to and from work. And the filth that goes with it. So there's kind of three layers to it, in addition to just the obvious one of, and it'd be great if the state wants to fund additional drug treatment. We need much more of it. We also need to have a lever to get people into it. So, anyone wants to make a motion to entertain it, or otherwise it's going to die? Ms. Whalen.
Hold on to that. I move adoption of the ordinance number 750 with the amendment, or at least a scrivener's error strikeout to the second whereas, third whereas, to remove the word immediately.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Bolke.
So I think last time, and I'll just throw this out for either the city manager or Ms. Walker, or whoever can answer it. When we talked about this at study session, we talked about how many potential cases we would be looking at in any given year and what the fiscal impact of that would be, since now we would be taking that responsibility on. Without knowing, of course, what the average sentence would be, or maybe we do know that. Can anybody fill us in on what you think is the total amounts?
So Councilmember Boki and the chief is here and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think on average, we average about 100 to 120 of these charges a year. However, I think as we communicated at your last study session, these are typically not standalone charges. They're part of other charges that a suspect has been taken into custody for. As far as the impact on the municipal court, I would say given the number, if it was 100 or 120, is somewhat negligible, because our court has the ability to handle up to about 12,500 charges a year across the board, and that includes our 2 contract cities as well. So it's somewhat negligible. As far as what the adjudication process would be through the court, I can't really answer that. We would have to have one and it would have to go through the process. And, again, it all depends on, what the PA does, with her process. And then once it gets in front of the judge.
With regard to what the PA does, one of the things to consider is that we have never been responsible for prosecuting meth, heroin, anything of that nature. And in order to prove our case, we would have to be able to prove that it's actually heroin, meth, or what have you. And we have had considerable issues getting tests back from the state tox lab on things like DUI. So as far as there being any version of a hammer in municipal court, the manager is absolutely correct. It's a negligible impact in terms of our regular flow through the courts day to day. But in terms of our ability to be effective, if somebody's asking for a trial or challenging it, we are going to be very limited because of the constraints on the state toxicology lab.
So, and I hate to get into a discussion about what the legislature may or may not do, because I was driving home tonight and they start talking about it, and it seemed a little bit of a hash. It just kind of, we're going to make it a gross misdemeanor, which would knock it down to the city, is what my understanding was on the report tonight that I heard on the radio. So it would come down to us anyway, but then they would have this substance abuse, the offer of this of rehab, which I guess I just don't see the state funding at a sufficient level on this much notice. It was kind of this. So I don't know. Right now it's the Wild West. I mean, there's no law. So I don't know that we're coming out with anything. I think that we either have 2 options. We either pass it tonight or we wait until the legislature doesn't do anything. So that's where I'm at. Thanks.
Ms. Bell, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I think that Councilmember Boki kind of answered it. I was just basically wondering why we wouldn't wait a little bit to see what the legislature put through.
Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, the one bill that does have traction is Senate Bill 5476. And Councilmember Boki, you did talk about some components of it where a treatment center would be set up and these individuals would be mandated to go, and there would be a quote unquote navigator that would be assigned to them, and it would be done under the umbrella of DSHS. And it's a bill that's being sponsored by Senator Doringa out of the East Side, I think the 45th district, if I recall. And, you know, she's been pretty clear with the Association of Washington Cities, and I know our city attorney has been part of those discussions this weekend, that her bill would not in any shape, form, or manner impact cities. So there would be no financial impact if 5476 doesn't make it through. But she's also clear in her discussions with cities that her bill, I guess, can be defined as the best of the worst because something's going to happen. And so that's why she's pushing hard on this bill, but also seeking input from cities. And if her bill doesn't go through, there is likelihood that maybe one of the other bills sneaks through, but given there's less than 3 weeks, probably unlikely, which means then we end up with an initiative on the ballot. And the challenge there that we're hearing from Senator Doringa and others is that if an initiative is approved, and who knows what it's going to be, the state legislature is going to have limited choices to make any changes. Hence the push on this current bill 5476.
Anyone else? Then I call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
nay. Motion carries. And I would note that if the legislature does something that makes sense, we can always repeal this and go with the state. I hope they do. So we now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
About new business, is there any new business to come?
Yeah, I'm gonna sit out there. I'll let you have the table. Thank you.
No, Mayor, there is not.
And so then we go to reports by the city manager. Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'd like to call upon our Parks and Recreation Director, Mary Dodsworth, who would like to give you a briefing on the joint cooperative use agreement between the city and the Clover Park School District. And I think this body is aware this has been under discussion for a number of years. It was actually an outcome of 2 joint meetings ago between the City Council and the Clover Park School District Board. However, Ms. Dodsworth and her team have been able to close the loop. And I also want to thank the school superintendent, Ron Banner, and his staff for bringing this to fruition. Quite frankly, it got hung up in 2020 just with what was going on in the world, given what the school district was dealing with and of course what the city was dealing with. But we're able to come together the last month or so and get this finalized. So with that, Ms. Dodsworth.
Good evening, Mayor and Deputy Mayor Whalen, City Council. I'm Mary Dodsworth with the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department. So as the city manager noted, you know, the city's been working with the school district since incorporation. We've been sharing spaces, each other's places for many, many years. And we've done it very, very well. We've had great relationships with them and everybody's been very giving of those spaces. I've been with the city for 20 years. Over the last years, you know, as changes in leadership and staffing occurred, it was always sort of reestablishing and reintroducing, you know, the agreements and the rules and how this school worked and how that building worked. And so we did come together to try and have a cooperative use agreement that represented our interest in working together, also to be a tool so that we didn't have to keep, you know, reinventing the wheel or re-educating new leaders, that it was really laid out and very clear regarding use, access, fees, etc. So it's been 2 years that we established this ad hoc team, and it was a great team. It had representation of policymakers, city council member, as well as school board director. We had administrators who would be actually implementing the plan. And then we also had some program staff on there that were actually be utilizing the spaces so that we could really get feedback from all different directions. We had great discussions, really met for several weeks, just talking about what's the purpose of the agreement and coming to, you know, what are the issues and the concerns. You know, everybody wanted to do the right thing, but, you know, we're very protective of our spaces. The school district worked really hard for their buildings. We've worked really hard for our spaces. And so a lot of it was really just developing trust and communication and making sure that we're all on the same page. So the intentions were, we really wanted to make sure that we were having efficient use of public spaces. All of these buildings and spaces and grounds are funded by our taxpayers. And so we wanted to make sure that we were remembering that efficient use of public resources, that we wanted to make sure we were aligning with all of our plans, our legacy plan, our comp plans, our school board plans. We wanted to make sure that what we were doing was really supporting our communities. We were looking at improving service to our citizens and our guests. We were providing more opportunities, really making sure that our facilities and spaces, that we're really meeting that equity tool, that equitable rule, so that those that might not have access to certain kinds of programs and services would have more likely be able to do it when they're in these free public spaces. And then also just, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at creating a healthy and safe community, that we wanted to make sure that everybody was using these spaces correctly. So many of the topics and the things that we included are part of this agreement, which the draft agreement was attached. And we were all ready to go. We had a joint meeting with school board and council a year ago, and we're all ready and on the same page, and then COVID hit. We all just went, you know, left and right and north and south, and everybody was reacting and changing day to day to day. So we got back together earlier this year, re-looked at the agreement as to where we were, put sort of the COVID eye lens on it, because we needed to take a look at how we are doing things differently. And so we really just added things like, we didn't want any additional use to cause burdens to our organizations. And if burden was created, then there would more likely be a cost for it. We really looked at, initially it was like, if it wasn't going to create an impact to staff or citizens or use, then it really could be free use, free space. But if there's now burdens with all of the impacts for cleaning and, you know, separation of use and things like that, you know, there may be a fee associated with those kinds of things. And that right now we're dealing with COVID pandemic, which is a different kind of pandemic, or a situation that we were all prepared for earthquakes and, you know, snowstorms and those kinds of things. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were keeping in mind that this pandemic is short term. Hopefully, you know, we'll get through this and be ready to move forward. But there could be other local, statewide, or international things that come our way, and that we would make sure that we're following whatever the best practices are, or whatever the guidance is at the time. So those things were added to it. So anyway, you have that's kind of the process we used for those of you that haven't been here for 2 years. And it was a very good cooperative conversation. I think the intent is very good between all parties. It wasn't created because there was a problem. It was really created just to continue to put in writing the great relationship that we have, and that the intent is to move forward. So I put a copy of the draft there. I'd be happy to answer any of your specific questions, or maybe clarify why something's in there, or how, but the other thing is, we wanted it to be simple. We looked at the beginning, many examples from all kinds of different agencies regarding school districts and park districts and cities and towns, and we looked at lots. Some agreements were pages and pages and pages and pages, and we didn't want to get into that. We didn't want it to be so complicated that the common person couldn't manage it and couldn't really understand what the purpose was. So we tried to keep it as simple as possible, knowing that really all relationships are about good communication and trust, and that we would continue to make that happen with this agreement. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
questions for Ms. Dodsworth? Mr. Brenstetter.
Thanks, Ms. Dodsworth. I really had two questions. One is, one of the most long-standing agreements that we had to do with the joint use park at Lake Louise Middle School. And that's not mentioned in this agreement. Is there a separate agreement that would still be in effect regarding that shared use park? Or is that going to be redesigned inside this structure?
No, the city has a separate agreement for the new folks on the council. Gosh, I can't remember how many years ago. The city and the school district went together on what was called a school park site. And the idea was that we didn't have a park within a half mile of every citizen. And so the idea was utilizing those elementary school sites because they're already being used like neighborhood parks. So how can we design them, build them, and have policies so that they're safe during the day, but open to families on the weekends? So to answer your question, Councilmember Brenstetter, we still have a separate agreement for that, and that's been ongoing. The idea was that any capital type of improvements, which a park would be, developing a new park on a school district ground would be a capital type of agreement, that anything that was capital in nature would be a separate program. This is really operational and day-to-day kinds of use, that if we were going to build another park or co-invest in some kind of improvement, that we would do that as a separate standalone opportunity.
Okay, and so as the legacy plan envisioned there being more such sites, they would each get their own separate agreement, and this is more of an agreement around activities or one-time, short-term thing. Okay, and the second is in the agreement there is a section that talked about sites not covered, and it's in paragraph C. Since I'm saying sub 3, it's on 296 of my packet, and includes Lakes High School, Clover Park High School, and Harry Lang Stadium, and Thomas Middle School. And it was in negotiating the agreement, is there some reason why Harrison Prep Academy, which is sort of the same level of those schools and has some facilities in it, although it doesn't have athletic fields, or was athletic fields, the lack of athletic fields, the reason why it's not on that list?
I think from the school district side, it was basically those specialty athletic facilities that wanted to be managed for high school, middle school type athletics. They're still available if they, on a case-to-case basis. It doesn't mean we can't utilize those facilities. Just like we put in ours as, our city hall and the pavilion. We put in those activity areas as well. Trying to look where that is on here. They put theirs in, prior to use for the city, pardon me, it's on the next page, 297. We also listed our facilities because we wanted to make sure just those specialty kind of facilities that are kind of not used on a regular basis and or would be a special type of program or activity, that we would just talk about them as a special space.
Okay, I understand.
Ours on there, they put theirs on there.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
Any other questions from Ms. Dodsworth? Seeing none, I guess it's back to you, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Dodsworth. And if it pleases the council, would like to bring this back for council consideration as part of your next regular meeting, which would be April 19th, which is 2 weeks from this evening.
Sounds fine.
Next up in your packet is a cover letter actually sent by the Pierce County Executive on behalf of the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners Steering Committee, or the SHAPE Steering Committee, I believe is what it's referred to, inviting the city of Lakewood to join this regional coalition, which is currently comprised of 8 cities, which would include Lakewood, the county, and the Puyallup tribe. It does not include all the cities within Pierce County. For example, it doesn't include Fircrest or University Place, Edgewood, Bonnie Lake, DuPont, and a couple of the other smaller, Wilkerson and in Eatonville. But certainly around here on the west side, it does. It doesn't include everybody. And also attached in your packet, and I know you've seen this before, is a draft interlocal agreement forming the SHAPE organization. And so the question for this body is this something that you would like to move forward with and be a part of? And if so, we've taken a look at the ILA, and I guess first I need to get some policy direction from the council. Is this something that you would like to participate in? And if so, we could do a deep dive into the ILA and see if there's anything jumping out at us that would be of concern. Certainly what we've seen so far, pretty straightforward in terms of forming an organization like this. The financial contribution from the city would be, depending upon the level of staffing and how they set it up, would be about depending on the option, $7,000 or $8,000 in 2001, about $20,000 in 2022, and upwards of $23,000 in 2023. The ILA also allows for an entity to remove itself with I can't remember the amount of time, but to remove itself from the coalition, though that cannot occur prior to 2023. So if you were to move forward and be part of this coalition, you would be in for the remainder of 21, 22, and 23. So that's kind of what I have. But again, from a policy standpoint, I'd like to get some direction. Is this something you'd like to participate in? And if so, if you have any comments now on the ILA, or if you'd like, once I get some policy direction, we could take a much closer look at it. But again, nothing really jumping out at us. It's a ILA.
Questions or comments from council? Mr. Whalen.
John, are the other city managers pretty positive about jumping on board with this from their policy boards?
We've chit-chat. Some of us have chit-chatted about it, but it hasn't really been a topic with us, primarily because the only cities that actually have city managers are, I just lost it now. Tacoma, Lakewood,
Puyallup, Fife, that whole thing.
Puyallup. Yeah, and I've talked to Puyallup, I've talked to Fife, and yeah, they'll think it's a good thing. I think for Lakewood, and the biggest benefit for Lakewood and as well as Tacoma is we're doing a lot of these things. So what we would bring to the table is, the programs and the policy issues that we have in place to deal with, the issues of housing affordability and things along those lines. So from a regional standpoint, I do think that there's some, value in having, a more concerted conversation. I guess my only concern is that there are a number of cities that are not at the table, particularly cities that border directly to Lakewood.
Does it help the consortium between Tacoma and Lakewood with regard to the home funds and the consolidated plan we do every year? Maybe
it would have no impact. The city of Lakewood and the city of Tacoma, we have such a very good working relationship, not just at that level, but at all levels. It really doesn't change anything. Again, I think what it would do is it would allow our two cities to share with others what we're doing, or at least initially.
It may present, if both sides were agreeable, the opportunity to jointly do some projects out of funding like that. But I think I agree with John from my participation in it. It's we may have more to offer than we receive in some ways, but the coordination through the county would be helpful. Also, it creates a consciousness among others in the county that each of the municipalities has different assets, it has different concerns, and it has its own unique characteristics where, for example, our heavy load of relatively inexpensive in the scheme of things rental housing and our rental housing safety program means we're providing part of the solution in a different way than others do. And so I think in that way it may insulate you from criticism or uniform policies from a more regional level that might be harmful to the whole program. Mr. Brandstetter.
Yeah, you know, I guess that I'm a little bit leery of seeing the value to Lakewood in doing this. I see that we have more to offer to others than that we would benefit from, and this is an area that there are already a lot of voices, and you know, we have the Puget Sound Regional Council that wants to get into housing. We have Olympia that is constantly looking at preemption type legislation, and you know, joining a semi-regional, a patchwork of regional cities that you know, that is not everybody in the county, and even all of our neighbors. You know, if we look at our legislative agenda this year, it had a housing item on it with the money we were asking for the LASA expansion. If we were part of an area that decided to, a group that was going to prioritize things, you know, I think that we're under some pressure to conform our legislative agenda to the regional mode to do that. And it isn't very clear from any of the presentations that we've had of what sort of a capital type gain we would get that would exceed the value we get from our home partnership, and the fact that there still has to be we're going to have $1,406 and others to do that. So I just think this is either going to duplicate or not only effort, but it's going to duplicate work for our staff by joining this, and it's got more potential to cause us headaches than benefits. It seems to me, if it's only a portion of the cities in the county.
Ms. Farmer.
I agree with Councilmember Brandstetter. Are you getting an echo?
Nope.
Okay. I'm concerned. Sorry, I'm getting an echo. I'm concerned that there is also that there are not enough players at the table, that it's not quite as equitable as it could be across the board. I didn't see a sunset clause. I may have missed it. I know how easy it is through experience to start something in government and not be able to stop it unless you have clear, measurable results set, clear goals set, and then measures that you look for and track against. And then if something's not working, you either tweak it or you stop it. I am a big fan of the regional approach, and I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to to make sure that we're connecting with the rest of Pierce County. And as several others have pointed out already, we fill a certain niche, others fill a certain niche, and we should definitely be working together. I am not entirely convinced this is it, but I'm interested in having more conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen.
Well, as I look at this for tonight, this is really just a report as opposed to an action item, so it's a good time to have some discussion. I'm generally somewhat supportive of it because in the work we have done with the different regional organizations, whether it's Puget Sound Regional Council, Pierce County Regional Council, and some of the others, it seems as if better thinking does come through the regional cooperation of organizations. And as I understand SHAPE, we're trying to put our best thinking together and actually put some money in it to staff it, as opposed to having our individual staffs having to carve out separate time in the various cities to kind of come and chat. And so this puts a little bit of our collective money where our mouth is. So I'm willing to support it. I do like the idea of the sunset clause that Councilmember Farmer talked about, to kind of give it a go potentially with some measurables that we hope to accomplish as an organization under the ILA, with a sunset clause that if we don't achieve what we hope to achieve by a date certain, that the funding goes away. So I would be okay with moving forward with some tweaks to the ILA.
I would note with respect to participation that if you take Tacoma unincorporated, Pierce County, Lakewood, and Puyallup, you have over 80% of the county's population. So I don't know what the other cities who have been dealing with this add into that, probably another 5% or so. Mr. Volke.
Do we know why, usually when you do these regional things, there's pretty much everybody's at the table, like PCRC or something like that. And in this case, it's been noted that there are several actors that are not there, including University Place and Stillicum, and I don't think DuPont's on that list either. Do we know why University Place didn't want to participate?
Maybe Ms. Spear, who's on, I think still on the line, could correct me. I don't recall University Place ever showing up from the very beginning. But Ms. Spear?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. That's correct. The University Place mayor was not involved at the start, and they haven't engaged regularly since it was more formalized from the mayoral roundtable to SHAPE as it is right now.
So what is when we talk about sunset dates, I guess I'm trying to understand the end game here, what this group is trying to accomplish. What does success look like?
Is that question to me, Mr. Volke, or someone else?
I'm looking for anybody to tell me, because I've heard this on my day job and my night job, and I still am not understanding what success is.
Ms. Spear, could you address that? And then I'd like to address the sunset/withdrawal clause.
Sure. When this began in 2019, that was pre-COVID, and it was the county executive and the mayor of Tacoma bringing other mayors together to say, hey, our two jurisdictions can't solve homelessness ourselves. It is a cross-jurisdictional issue, and there are a number of things that we should be doing to help build up existing housing stock, in essence, to help with reducing homelessness. That's now become more complicated because of COVID and what that has done to housing affordability for people who may have been laid off, et cetera, due to last year. But what the intent at its most fundamental is to provide a common source of information for jurisdictions to be able to come up with best practices. So as has been said already this evening, in Lakewood, there are a number of programs in place regarding housing affordability, either preservation or creation. Other jurisdictions don't have that. They are smaller, they don't have the resources potentially to develop the plans to begin with, but then they don't have the staff to administer things like the city's CDBG program or its rental housing safety program. So it's trying to assist those smaller jurisdictions, but also for the larger jurisdictions act as even a bigger voice for state advocacy. So while the city is involved with AWC, this would be a group that is exclusively focusing on housing, and it would be the jurisdictions within Pierce County rather than a statewide group going and saying, these are the housing needs that we have in Pierce County. So those have been the highlights, the reasons and the advantages voiced so far.
Okay, thank you.
And then
I just note on those larger jurisdictions, one of the ideas initially, I don't think it's waned, is that if Pierce County has a more collective voice, there is a better advocacy platform for grant funding and perhaps even some pilot projects, for example, were one of the things that were discussed.
I'd just like to point out that while there's not a sunset clause in the ILA, there is a withdrawal clause. And as I previously noted, if you were to sign on this year, you're committed for 2.5 years through the end of 2023. However, if you wanted to get out after 2023, you could give notice. You would have to give notice by June 30th of 2022. So a little over a year from now. But after December 31st of 2023, if you wanted to withdraw in 2025, for example, or 2024, you have to give notice by June 1st of that year. So you have to give a 6-month notice, which is fairly consistent with these types of agreements and these types of entities.
Mr. Whalen.
I think everybody answered my questions. I'll lower my hand here, but I don't know what we expect staff to bring back for further consideration at this point. Do we have enough guidance for the city manager or not? We seem a little split. So I guess we should probably get a census, Mayor, on where we are. I sense very good and heartfelt comments that this may be a pig in a poke and we're wasting money with another organized effort to do good things without an end game in sight, and certainly without a financial end game in sight by way of a sunset clause. I would be in support of it because there's been so much talk, and we know affordable housing is the topic du jour on everyone's mind in all the cities, and an effort to regionalize at least some conversation about it with dedicated staff. I'm okay spending some money as long as it's somewhat limited over the next 2 to 4 years to give it a go. If we can come up with some policy options regionally that make some sense and maybe collate our resources collectively to the best we can to do something positive, I'm okay with that. That's just me. And I'm in a happy place, so.
See, you've got helpers in the background. Anyone else? Ms. Bell.
Yes, I agree with Jason. I think that it's a good place to start. I think that it is a hot topic. Affordable housing is such, it's just something that we need to talk about and address. And I think this is a great collaborative solution. And there are things that we do need to know, like what are the end game measurables, but I'm for it with those little tweaks that we had talked about.
Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think with the withdrawal clause that City Manager Caulfield mentioned, I think I'm okay with that, with going forward with it. As long as we don't have to go eternally to get out of it. Should we want to? Thank you.
Ms. Farmer.
I'm less interested in a legal withdrawal clause that would allow us the opportunity to back out. I'm not sure that might be politically feasible at whatever time that is. If there were a sunset clause that everybody had to work toward, either achieving results or not achieving results, I think that's the better option. But all of my reluctance aside, I think I'm happy to move forward with this because of its regional component, because there are obviously pieces of this that haven't been fully explored yet. So let's give it a shot.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to agree with all the above comments. And I think that I get nervous when they start talking about regional housing solutions, and it always seems as though we end up leading on any new low-income housing. But I do feel that there are some things in the works that are projects that we will want to be a part of, and I'm hoping anyway that there's success in this. The housing situation just is really tough right now, and I just don't know. We're just in a kind of this generational thing or something that happens about every 15 years. It's almost near frenzy levels, and I think it's one of those cases. If you're not at the table, you might be on the table. So I think we want to be there. We want to show that we're a regional player, that we're interested in solutions, but they've got to be positive solutions for us and not kind of tired tropes, I guess, if that's the right word. I don't even know what that word means. So, kind of tired solutions and really some kind of newer solutions that are gonna solve some homelessness. So I'm hopeful, and I think maybe together we can come up with some solutions that are well funded and well thought out, and also sustainable, which is really becoming a concern on a lot of angles. So I'm with the rest of the council on this one.
Mr. Branstetter.
Well, I'm more lukewarm than the rest of the council, perhaps. The ability to withdraw from the group is not the same as a sunset clause that says by 2024 we're going to at least have done some specific milestones, like we actually have a capital fund, which is a real vague concept in the ILA about maybe we will, but what it would be done and going like that. Okay. And that maybe we'll be able to get some grants, but if we haven't been able to accomplish that by 2024, that going on off. And I'm certainly in favor of the previous concept of there being a table where there were mayors and representatives from all of the cities there that were discussing and sharing the best practices and things. So I guess that I would want the city manager and staff to really look at the ILA and see, is the ILA really going to do something other than create 2 jobs? And see what the final ILA looks like before I really know where I stand.
I think we should advance it, but be careful about what the final ILA says. There's still some tweaks going on at the drafting level, who votes how, that kind of thing. I would note that one of the concerns that was the genesis of having staff was that people could get together and share best practices, but it wasn't always the people with technical knowledge. If I was there instead of Ms. Spear, for example, there would be a near total lack of technical knowledge. And there wasn't anybody to compile it and to share it with others, because that's not Ms. Spear's job or somebody at the city of Tacoma's job or somebody at Gallup's job. So while the discussion was good and the concept was good, the implementation kind of lacked a key element. That was a focal point that was a living, breathing, at least a living, breathing person. Also, with respect to the capital fund, there's a danger that if you say you will have one and you've signed the ILA, that there's an implication that you're going to ante up your proportionate share. I think that's why in the drafting it's intentionally vague. So it isn't a commitment by the different municipalities to kick in money. So it was probably, I don't think it's an accident that it was ended up drafted that way. So I think we have a consensus to move forward. We'll see what it actually says, and I'm sure Ms. Spear will amply dissect it and find the tripwires for us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. That was helpful. I think, I heard, several comments, including, the sunset clause, some measurables, metrics, things along those lines, but also more participation from other cities, leaning toward maybe 14 or 15 members as opposed to 10. But we will go through the document and then also communicate this body's concerns that you've outlined here this evening, and we'll get back by we'll share with you what we pulled together and send back to them.
Right, thank you.
And then, Mayor, if it pleases the council, I have a handful of other updates that I'd like to provide.
Your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the state legislative front, there's less than 3 weeks left in the session. Not hearing any rumblings about whether or not they're going to want to extend or go a little longer. However, the city's priorities are actually moving along quite nicely. Our request for support for tax increment financing is moving. House Bill 1189, it made it out of the House and is now over in the Senate. And so, knock on wood, this actually might be the year where we get some form of tax increment financing here in Washington State. Also, another key initiative, our funding for the Community Partnership Program over at Western State Hospital is included in both the House and the Senate operating budgets, as well as, of course, the governor's budget. So that's looking good. On our capital budget request, we've actually done very, very well. I know I provided you an update with the funding that we expect to receive in support of American Lake Park, Wards Lake Park, Fort Steilacoom Park, as well as LASA. So, for American Lake Park, we have $1 million coming to us from the WWRP grant, as well as from ALEA. And then the Senate includes our request for $250,000. However, the House doesn't. So hopefully as part of the reconciliation process, we'll get that. As it relates to Wards Lake Park, actually, all of our requests there are funded. Our WWRP grant of $500,000, our youth athletic field grant of $350,000, and then our capital budget request of $250,000 is included in both the House and the Senate. And then our request for funding in support of Fort Steilacoom Park infields, the youth athletic fields for $350,000. We also made the cut on that. And then with our LASA request, it was included in the House budget, but is not in the Senate. However, we are having conversations with Senator Conway about how we can get that in the final budget, again, when both the House and the Senate capital budgets are reconciled. Also, some good news from last week. The House did release a spending transportation plan, and included in there are 2 wins for the Lakewood community. One is our request for $250,000 for our multimodal study, which we have been chasing for a number of years now, as well as SSMCP, South Sound Military and Community Partnerships, $204 million for I-5 improvements, including some preliminary work across the Delta, the Nisqually Delta, and we're doing that, of course, in partnership with the Nisqually tribe. So overall, certainly from a financing standpoint, we are looking pretty good. On the federal front, we did submit our $4 million request to Congresswoman Strickland's office last week, along with, we received 11 letters of support from a number of community partners. So I want to thank all of them. And then also the Congresswoman then followed up with us about Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, saying that we have until this Thursday, April 8th, to submit another request in support of the transportation authorization bill that Congress is currently developing. There were some specific criteria on there that really narrowed down the projects that we could move forward with. And so long story short, we have submitted for the last leg of South Tacoma Way, actually the last leg, not just in Lakewood, but within the whole corridor, including Tacoma, between 88th and 80th, which is the city's northern limits. The reason being is because one of the eligibility criteria, it needs to be on the Puget Sound Regional Council TIP, as well as the state TIP. And then the monies have to be obligated by September 30th of 2022. And this project, from that perspective, is right there. We're going to be designing it this year with federal monies. So it's already on the PSRC list and the state CIP. But also, like I said, it's the last leg. It connects into Tacoma, which recently, I think about 3 years ago, finished their last improvements on their side of South Tacoma Way. And that's something that the Congresswoman is very familiar with, having been the mayor of Tacoma. It's also really beneficial for our international district and for redevelopment and investment opportunities in that neighborhood as well. So we'll be moving forward with that. I did want to let you know that Pierce County reached out to us and let us know that they still have reserved their where our senior activity center is, their building down on Lakewood Drive. They still have it set aside for Pierce County Superior Court activities because of COVID and social distancing. And while they haven't used it yet, they do have it set up and ready to go. And at this point in time, so long as our region remains in phase 3, they would like to have the ability to utilize that through the end of this year. The good news for Lakewood is that we don't have to pay rent to Pierce County. The bad news is that we don't have a senior activity center, but we can't have one anyways. So what we're hopeful is that once we get into phase 4, that the court will realize that, hey, we don't need that facility, so we can have it back and we can reopen our senior activity center. In the meantime, our senior activity team continues to get creative and looking for opportunities to stay connected with our seniors here in Lakewood. And we're also looking at maybe some other opportunities in some other facilities where we can bring the seniors together under phase 3 circumstances, similar to what they've done some trips out at Silicon Park and things along those lines. We were contacted, myself and the police chief were contacted by Pierce Transit. Right now, the city of Lakewood, we provide the equivalent of 4 FTEs, police officers, through an extra duty contract for police services on Pierce Transit on their buses. The majority of their police services are actually provided by the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. So they're looking at different options. And one of their ideas is to have specific dedicated officers. And their request is, well, would Lakewood be willing to provide 6 dedicated Pierce Transit police officers? So it would be above and beyond extra duty. So, the chief and I said, yeah, we'll be more than happy to listen to what you have to say. And I know the chief participated in an initial meeting late last week. And as I get more information, I'll certainly keep you appraised of that. Again, they're just simply looking at options and alternatives. It might even not come to fruition. But again, we were asked to come to the table and we're always willing to do that. We're in the process of closing out our 2020 year-end financial report. And so far our general fund, all considering, is looking good, which is a reflection of again, our financial policies, and you've heard me say this before, our financial policies work really, really well when times are when things are going well. However, they work really, really well when things aren't going too well. And that's what happened in 2020. That coupled with a number of action strategies that we put in place. Right now, it looks like that our general fund operating revenues came in about $2 million or 4.7% under our budget estimate, and significantly greater than compared to 2019, but really we're focused on the budget. However, on the expenditure side, our expenditure savings came in at 3.6 million or 9.1% under budget. And then at the end of the year, we ended up, after taking out reserves, we ended up with an ending fund balance of 8.7 million, but there's at least $2 to $3 million there that are already allocated in 2022 and a couple of years beyond that. And so Ms. Kraus is working through on that. But we ended 2019 really, really strong. And again, because of our financial policies and the action strategies that we put in place, we were able to carry that forward into 2020 as well. And Ms. Kraus will be presenting a more detailed financial report to you as part of your April 26th study session. So 3 weeks from today. I'd also like to congratulate our wellness committee, as well as our HR director, Mary McDougall, and her team. The city of Lakewood, once again, was recognized by AWC as a well city. And that's a great program that we have here. We do a lot of fun things so folks can stay active and fit. And the benefit of also being a well city is that we get a 2% premium discount on our medical premiums for next year, 2022. The city has been a well city going back to 2004, with the exception of 2010. So again, this is a reflection of the wellness committee, but all of our employees who participate in our wellness program. Also, we did submit our 2021 annual Dr. Martin Luther King Community Celebration virtual event to AWC as part of their Municipal Excellence Award program under Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. If you haven't been down at 4 Stilichon Park, the new restrooms are open. And then several upcoming events. One is, of course, our community cleanup. Our spring community cleanup is going to be on Saturday and Sunday, April 17 and 18, respectively. And still looking for volunteers. So if any of you are volunteers, willing to volunteer to check IDs, because it's only for Lakewood residents, please let myself or the city clerk know. Also, Sound Transit kicked off an online open house as it relates to the South Tacoma service area and the Lakewood Station area for access, trying to get feedback from the public on how they can provide better access to either their bus services as well as their train services here in Lakewood. They're seeking public input. It kicked off last Thursday, April 1st, and runs through April 20th, so about three weeks or so. And then lastly, the city clerk received notification from Lakeview Light and Power. They are holding their 99th annual meeting. So I believe next year, that means they're going to be 100 years old, the co-op. And they're holding their 99th annual meeting on April 22nd. And I know every year this body selects one of you to attend that meeting. It'll be virtual this year, just like it was last year. And I think it was virtual. Maybe they canceled it. I can't remember. But in any event, it's also whoever is selected by this body gets to vote on who's going to be on their board. So Mayor, either tonight or next week, I'd appreciate if you could identify somebody on this body to serve as the city's delegate to the annual meeting. And the city clerk does have the ballot in her office, and whoever is selected can then fill that out.
What day is that?
It's April 22nd, and I believe that's a Thursday. And it's, if I recall too, it's at 6 p.m.
All right. Anybody interested? I would be on vacation.
I have done that in the past, and I am interested in doing it again. However, I did not know whether Miss Bell might be the only council member that actually is a customer of Lakeview Light and Power. I'm not. Is that your neighborhood served by them?
I am. I do pay them.
She can go on her own.
I would. She has a unique perspective in that regard.
I am willing to go if that is if everyone wants that. It sounds like that's fine. Yes.
Thank you, Councilmember Bell.
You're welcome.
They're a good group. They're a good
She'll
group.
end up on the board.
This feels like hazing.
No, actually, if you do it this year, you get to do it next year because hopefully they'll be doing it in person, and they have snacks.
Oh.
So just to let you know.
Sold. Okay.
Yeah. So that's my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Any questions for the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to council comments. Ms. Farmer.
My only thought was a follow-up from the council retreat where it appeared that we wanted to move away from a joint resolution on equity with the school district to a city-only statement. So joint resolution, now a city statement. And I was curious about the next steps, the process, the method, the mechanism by which we would have those conversations so that we could get at such a statement.
Good question. Usually those start with staff with council suggestions and then council adding or subtracting if it's a matter of substance like this instead of just a formality. So Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. And so council, so the original joint resolution does come forward. You what's the term? You did continue it from your March 15th meeting, pending the outcome of your discussion at your retreat. And so it is on your agenda for April 19th. So I appreciate council members' comments because it would be good to maybe have an understanding of what if you want more information for that meeting on April 19th.
Well, I think we need.
Other than just bring forward. I'm sorry.
I think we would want before that time to have the opportunity to either add or subtract from that draft. I'd look to council to see if and that would seem natural to be a study session before the 19th. But I don't know what council's wishes are there. Mr. Whalen.
I agree. I don't think we need to do a wholesale redo because staff put a fair amount of work into wordsmithing that to present to council. I think there's some language changes we probably collectively as a body would like to make. So I would agree that a study session agenda item would be appropriate for this, and that way we wouldn't have to necessarily break into a subcommittee, although that's an option. A subcommittee of 3 council members to wordsmith it and bring it forward to the council of the whole.
So
fine with either.
So there is room on your April 12th meeting next week. There's only 2 items on your agenda at this point in time. So certainly adding this for discussion, if council wishes to do that.
I would like to do that.
And let's see, any comments, looking for waves?
I think that's fine. Councilmember Farmer, are you okay with that? To kind of get some time to do that on a study session?
Yes, I think that would be great. If we could get a copy of that with all the whereases taken out so that it reads more like a statement, I think that would be helpful.
You know, get a little whereas heavy from time to time.
So rather than having it as a resolution, you'd like it as a statement?
Sure.
That's what I heard us say at the retreat, was that we wanted it to be a statement.
Mr. Branstetter.
I think if we could come up with a document or a communication that we could agree to, something and massage in a study session, that then when we get to April 19th, where we have the original resolution brought forward, we could then move to substitute whatever the new product is and act on it, and then still have our intended more in-depth discussion about actual actions and strategies on May 22nd.
Okay, so we've got a study session next week. We'll have, John, if you could send out a Word copy of the resolution as previously drafted to everybody, and you could tweak and share at the study session. Does that sound like a plan, folks?
Yes.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Farmer? Mr. Boki?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. One, I was incredibly impressed by the number of participants in the art contest. I was just like, wow, when they handed out that number, and I thought it was just very well done. So if Mr. Caulfield could let staff know that we were just really proud of the effort that was put in, and I think it's inspired to have Gimhe involved, and I thought it went very well, and it was a hopeful sign that that we'll really get things moving here when we can all start to get together again. And that's about it for me. I did see the bathrooms, a very nice touch there. They have the little swing in front of the bathrooms for people who are waiting. So that was very nice. And I walked through Fort Silicon Park and just really impressed with all the improvements that have been made in there, and the use of that parking lot on Angle Lane has been incredible. It was busy yesterday and nobody was parking along the street. So that's turned out really, really well. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Ms. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to make the same comments basically that Councilmember Boki made about the art contest. I think it was fabulous, wonderful. It was so great to see such diversity in art, different mediums. Some people use like popsicle sticks, and I saw some other mixed media pieces. It was just so creative and inventive, just really showing the community theme that we have. And I'm really excited about Lakewood's anniversary this year and the celebrations that are coming about.
Thanks. Ms. Moss.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with the art comments. They were very well done. But I did want to share with you that last Wednesday, I attended the AWC conference by Zoom. It was really interesting, very informative, a lot of discussion on the various bills that Mr. Caulfield had kept us up to date on, but House Bill number 1421 did not progress out of the House. And that bill is geared toward collecting on past due accounts. And apparently there's approximately $40 to $100 million of past due accounts. They're trying to find ways to compensate for that. but they were hoping that they could get that bill passed so that they could go and collect on those bills. So it's outstanding bills, and outstanding debts that was owed to the state, I guess. So I'm not sure. So they were looking for ways to other ways to mend those. And bill number 5022 is on recycling. We can look forward to some changes on that one. They're looking at 3 types of trash bags, styrofoam, containers for household containers, and a lot of other things. So there will be some changes coming to the recycling bin, and that one is looking to come to pass forward. I also had an interview with the Tacoma News Tribune on diversity in jury pools and what LMCC can do to assist in these efforts. And I am interested in that, although I had shared with them that LMCC was not focused on that. But I spoke with several people, including Judge Mansfield, and learned that there is a concern in the court system that they are trying to address. I also learned that there's an issue, and Judge Mansfield is scheduling a Zoom meeting with myself and Administrator Chris Gaddis to discuss this and to see what we can do. And I am interested in this jury pool process, so I want to be a part of that. And so she's gonna schedule a Zoom meeting, but the article will come out in the TNT in about 2 weeks, so probably another week or so before we see that. The interview that I had was with, her name just left me, but anyway, she wanted to be invited and she wants to know more about what's going on in Lakewood. So we will be inviting her to come to our events and stuff as we move forward. Apparently there is a jury diversity that is ongoing. So there's a group of people that are meeting talking about this. So there's an issue that's been going on for some time, and they're trying to find a way to make it come to fruition. So there would be more on that after I have the conversation with the judge and that. And finally, I think our retreat went well on Saturday. You know, I was looking at this, I'm like, didn't we talk about this already? It's been so long since we met, but that 5th Monday makes a difference. So, but anyway, I was looking forward to our follow-ups. And so I think I'll have more to report when it comes back to the jury pool after I've had our conversation. So thank you.
Mr. Brandstetter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I also really liked the art contest outcomes and the way it played out. The part that I really liked were the descriptions of the art that the students put down. So I was kind of into the words and the themes that they thought were important and were trying to express. And I also thought that Mr. Guerrero's presentation during the public hearing was interesting, although it seemed to be broader than the Lakewood Station District. But it did cause me to have some questions and to look more closely as to the difference between the staff recommendation and the Planning Commission recommendation on parking and a couple of other things. So I'm going to go through and submit my questions to the city manager to do that. But I don't know whether there are things that need to be further discussed, or whether we'll really be able to want to act on the 19th, or whether there are some things that we need to discuss policy-wise with respect to parking or other aspects of that plan. But we'll see. We'll see when we get to the 19th. In any event, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, with respect to that, taking off of Mr. Brandstetter's comments, I have some concerns that are as yet unanswered, I guess, about whether the parking issue and the comments from the gentleman from California whose father owns a large chunk of property there were aimed at low-income housing, to incentivize low-income housing or to service low-income housing. I think we took this area out of the low-income incentivized zoning aspect that we had at one time, or the tax increment, not tax increment, but
MFT.
tax. Yeah, but it just seems that it wasn't addressing our missing middle. And the other very real issue we have in Lakewood for decades to come, maybe not futuristic, but is the fact that much of this will be rented by young single people in the military who rent an apartment and they have 4 cars. And we ran into that problem over in the old 4 acres site by Springbrook Park, where 3 soldiers or airmen rent an apartment and they have 1.5 parking spots. And base security doesn't lend itself to mass transit. So those are problems that maybe are a little bit unique to Lakewood. I would note that County Council member Janie Hitchen is having a meeting on Zoom meeting, April 28th, on ARPA funding to get ideas. I have been invited to that, intend to attend, but I might need backup because I'm still going to be out of town.
Sure.
The comment on the Pierce Transit policing contract, just note that getting a little bit from 2 different sides on that. Pierce Transit is potentially going to get charged more by the Pierce County Sheriff, who has a different pricing method than the prior Pierce County Sheriff. And so they're shopping. So I think that's what precipitated that. And also kind of coming out of the county, there may be an opportunity if the executive goes forward with an ARPA budget proposal for participation in a very wide-ranging youth recreation program for the summer. Have socialization, recreation, get outside after you've been in COVID for a year kind of deal in parks across the county, assisting all municipalities. It's kind of still in an embryonic stage, but there may be an inquiry from the county to the city of what would your capacity be if there was a very low barrier and you could invite as many kids as you could handle and staff up for the summer. So more to come on that. Anything else before we go to executive session?
You skipped me.
Oh, Mr. Whalen, sorry.
Yes. Well, I just wanted
to. You're gone and forgotten.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to thank Councilmember Bell with working on us to create these incredible filters. It was so realistic tonight that it was an amazing opportunity to put it into play. So thank you for allowing that. On the art stuff, I just want to echo the comments that everyone made on the student arts, especially the commentary that Mr. Branstetter indicated. It would be great to send them back if we haven't done so already, a heartfelt thank you, because the kids, if you look at the words that they put into each of those projects about unity, even the adults, some of the work was really fascinating and quite heartfelt. There was one, the woman, an adult who had the apple, where she had the different colored pieces of the apple that were stapled together. I mean, that piece could be a bronze in one of the next public art things. I mean, it was so well done. Speaking of that, the Arts Commission met, its subcommittee met on the Colonial Plaza, and I just want to give you an update. They whittled down the 18 submissions of those who submitted qualifications down to 6. And you will be, I think, quite impressed with the submissions. And so those 6 are now going to have an orientation out there at the Colonial Plaza in another week. Following that, we're going to have interviews with each of the 6 and whittle down those candidates to the final 2 or 3 for submission to the council for review. And those final 2 or 3 will have a little bit of a vignette that they're going to propose for their piece of public art. So the 6 that it's whittled down to are renowned artists in the area. I mean, it's really kind of shocking that we have that quality that is interested to submit to our little project. So you will be quite impressed. It's a good thing. So that's all I have, other than enjoy the filter. And I'm sorry for the city manager, he didn't get to see me in shorts. I tried to keep it as professional as I could tonight for you. So
I'm sorry to report that the Art Commission decided I couldn't be a finalist. My submission was an excavator with an open claw aimed at the Thriftway building.
QFC.
Yeah, it was QFC. So we will now go to executive session.
Find the link.
For approximately 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1B to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate to lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price. Council is not expected to take any action following the executive session except to return to this session and announce that we are adjourned.
Great.
So we are now recessed into executive session for 15 minutes.
Brianna, can you send me the link to my work email?
Sending it now. Hello.
Hi,
We're adjourned.
thank you, Mayor.
And thanks for fixing my iPad.
Absolutely.